will that be a correct assumption to make as a first employee and as the, I don't want to say you are the co-founder, but as someone who immensely contributed. So today we know who to apportion the blame to. And you are here to try and remedy the mistakes of the past. Will I be correct in summing up like that?
Thank you very much for the question. I appreciate it too. When one looks at the findings on the IG's office in the report of the high-level review panel and then compares it to those of the Matthews Commission in 2007, 2008, around there, they're essentially the same. So what one would say is in 15 years, since the findings of the Matthews Commission, we have not implemented the reforms outlined in the report of the Matthews Commission. And I testified before the Matthews Commission. And all of these issues were raised back then in the Matthews Commission. The institutional status of the IG was wrong, that the number of functions of the IG was not properly clarified, that the minister was required to introduce regulations for the functioning of the OIGI. So many of those were raised back then. In fact, I recall that I led a team that wrote many of the regulations. But when I left there, I'm not sure what happened to them. But I had a clear idea, and I've placed this in my CV, on how to conduct monitoring and review, how to certify, and we also converged those concepts with what the Auditor General does. So I would, to the contrary, honourable members, say that I contributed to a proper development of the intellectual capacity of the Office of the IG when I was there. And I also raised the gaps in the Matthews Commission, and they appeared in the report of the Matthews Commission. But it seems like we never moved since the Matthews Commission in 2008, both for the oversight as well as the intelligence services in terms of abuse. We seem not to have put in the necessary checks and balances since the Matthews Commission, and they were reported once again by the high-level review panel of 2021. So I want to give context to your comments that I believe that I contributed to resolving these challenges, but it was ultimately the executive who had the prerogative to bring about the necessary changes. They were really beyond our reach. Yeah.
In terms of the powers and function of the office, 2 minutes. Was I that long, Chair? Really?
Very, very long.
Yeah. I only asked 2 questions, but be that as it may, in terms of the powers and function, that of monitoring and reviewing the activities of the services, the intelligence and counterintelligence, what is your understanding of monitoring and review?
Yes, thank you, honourable member. With respect to monitoring, the monitoring is a reactive function. The monitoring takes place with reference to the referent object of the legislation, the Constitution, the respective policies on intelligence and counterintelligence. Monitoring is directed purely to determine compliance or non-compliance. And it supports the function of the IG to determine whether or not the service has done anything unlawful or constitutes an abuse of its powers. So monitoring, the referent object of monitoring is to determine compliance and non-compliance. With respect to review, as I mentioned earlier, one of the lacunas in the legislation, it does not define the meaning of the word review. And in practice, the review function has been construed to mean a review of performance. So it's more of a performance assessment. And that one is also conducted with a view to determining the intelligence activities are contributing to national priorities and whether or not the services are meeting their respective mandates. So review is revolving around the practice of intelligence conduct and performance.
Lastly, if you were an IGI currently and the aftermath of the July unrest in relation to the review, what would you have done as an Inspector General?
Honourable Member, the July unrest was, in all intents and purposes, a significant intelligence failure. The first thought I would have is that the service has failed to report. I would determine whether on the service is reporting a significant intelligence failure, because clearly the July unrest occurred. The intelligence services failed to anticipate it. They failed to report it. They failed to provide the necessary information to decision makers to neutralize it. My first thought would be significant intelligence failure, and I would expect the services to explain what went wrong and to explain any sort of intervention they are making to correct or to ensure a non-recurrence of this particular failure. So that would be my first thought, if I understand the question properly, that a significant intelligence failure has just befallen the country, where the intelligence services has failed to neutralize an event. This is why intelligence services exist, is to identify and to neutralize the events such as took place in July, and they have failed. But I hope I understand the question, but that would be my response.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I see Honorable Muimang doesn't want to say anything. Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Faisal. Just the one aspect that I want to tease from you, particularly given the fact that you were at the center of the conceptualization of the implementation of the IGS office, and given the position that you occupied, I want to believe that you are able to make a reflection in terms of the work that was done by the previous IGIs. One during the investigation that was done by the IGS office with regard to the Hawks mails, with the investigation of certain Mr. Makazoma. And then the second period relates to the work of the IGI under Ms. Faith Khadebe, where there seems to have been a close proximity between the IGI's office and the State Security Agency. And then the third one that I want to talk about is the current incumbent, with the tension between the office and the former DG, where the top clearance certificate was withdrawn. From your understanding, what could be behind this variance in terms of the relation between the IG's office and the ministry? Could the rationale behind this variance be attributed to the what we call the proximity between intelligence office and the executive, or between the intelligence office and the decision makers? From where I come from, it is inevitable, given the importance of intelligence in terms of guiding the decision makers. This proximity is inevitable. So if you could just make a reflection on those variants across those three periods, with a view to see as to whether is there something that you can offer, having made a reflection on that and having been the person that was at the forefront of the implementation process and the setting up of this office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I certainly see the evolution of the IG's office in three parts, as you have explained. That the period of the hoax emails, where I served, that was a period of establishment and consolidation. I think the Inspector General, we always consider the Inspector General at the time to be the first Inspector General, even though there were others who served for very short periods. This was the first substantive opportunity to embed the role and function of the Inspector General from around 2002, 2004. And this was the period of bringing about the credibility and laying the foundation for intelligence oversight. This is a period during which the hoax emails were exposed and the abuse of the intelligence services for political purpose was exposed. And I see that as a foundation period. In fact, I also see this period as a lost opportunity because the hoax emails, as well as the exposure of the political abuse of intelligence by the domestic agency, was an opportunity to course correct. And instead, after 2006, 2007, it seemed to have intensified as expressed in the report of the high-level review panel. So I believe this consolidation phase had already pointed out significant red warning lights about the abuse of intelligence and abuse transpiring at the time, and the opportunity was lost. I then move on to the period of the Inspector General, Faith Adebe. And I believe that during that time, there, in my view, there was controversy about some of the reports of the Inspector General and the credibility of the functioning of the office at that time. And there was certainly certain perceptions of a closeness between the IG's office and the executive that was not in keeping with the independence of that office, and perhaps tainted the reputation of the office at the time. And I've seen the current incumbent and followed some of the testimony before the Zondo Commission, and one can clearly see an Inspector General that operated without fear or favor. I saw an Inspector General there with a backbone, even though I don't know the person at all. And I believe that the independence and credibility of the IG's office was established. And I say this as an outside person looking from the outside onto the inside. The credibility of the office established, and the work of the IG also demonstrated in the public space very credibly. And I see that as an opportunity that one can capitalize on going forward. So I would then answer the second part of the question in expressing that in terms of my understanding of the evolution of the office, what I can bring. I believe that the intelligence services have lost their way. And I use the high-level review report as a source of information. And the agency is in requirement of some sort of public consent. We need to rethink the legislation governing intelligence. We need to rethink the white paper. We need to rethink the whole concept of public consent. And we need to have a shared understanding of what national security is and rewrite some parts of the legislation to define and refine the mandate of the intelligence services, which is in some places too broad. We need to define it in objective terms, especially domestic intelligence, but also counterintelligence, very dangerous mandates which are susceptible to abuse. And all of those, I believe, then give rise to some sort of transformation within the intelligence services, especially state security agency. And this transformation must be led on the basis of that review of the architecture of intelligence, the white paper, the national security policy, as well as amendments to legislation. And then we need to embark upon serious transformation of the state security agency and bring about a new theory of change. And I say that is to realign and re-professionalize the state security agency in particular, to re-professionalize it, to respond to the security threats the country faces, and to become a lean, professional organization that has respect for the law and respect for the Constitution. And I believe this is where I can assist because of my understanding of the role and function of intelligence, as well as my experience running complex organizations in government that require serious transformation, and my appreciation of the intelligence services and their history. In fact, I recall in 1994 was another amalgamation which we seem to forget, is where we amalgamated statutory and non-statutory, where enemies came together. And I was part of that process and the aftermath. And I believe this is another time where we face a huge challenge And I believe that my understanding of government, of the intelligence services, and also transformation of complex organizations, I could play a role as an oversight practitioner in the role of an IG to support and oversee and monitor the intelligence services to make this transformation, which I believe is critical. I believe that the intelligence services, in particular the SSA, is in a poor state, to put it mildly, and I believe I could play this dynamic role in supporting the change that is required. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. This time you were spot on. Some bit of improvement from your side. Yeah. Honorable Stebe.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, sir. I just want you to make, there's something that doesn't seem right to me. In your document that you present, your CV, in the date 2004, under employment history, 2004 to 2012, let me start at 2002 to 2003, were acting chief operating officer in the office of the Inspector General for Intelligence. That's correct. But 2004 to 2012, you was the chief operating officer, officer of the Inspector General for Intelligence, and then in brackets, Deputy Director General. What is that Deputy Director General refer to? Was it your position, or was that the position of the Inspector General? Just clear that for me, please.
Yes, I would have been referring to my level, that I was a Deputy Director General. I was appointed as a DDG. The Chief Operating Officer was the title of the position. It was at the level of a Deputy Director General. That's what it would mean.
It sounds strange to me because that terminology is not used nowadays. We're talking about the Inspector General and not the DG or of these. Well, fine. Then just one thing: the relationship and reporting lines between the ministers and the IGI is key for stability and efficiency for the office of the IGI. Now, how will you strengthen that office under the current legislation?
So, to clarify, you are referring to the reporting lines between the respective ministers and the IG, and how I would...
It seems to us that there's not, I won't say animosity, but the trust is maybe not there all the time. How will you go along under the current legislation without changing it to strengthen that and work with those people?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to say Honourable Chair. See, the Chair is not there. Honourable Member, thank you very much. I think this is a very practical question with practical considerations. That one often sees that the respective ministers and the IG don't have the appropriate relationship. And I think that is the thrust of the question. I think what is important is a building of relationships there as well, where we spoke earlier about stakeholder management. That the IG and the ministers have common interests. They're both responsible for oversight in a different way. The ministers are responsible for establishing policy as well, and superintendents. So their functions are somewhat different, but it's also part of the oversight architecture. If there's a poor relationship between the minister and the IG, it speaks to a failure to appreciate the mutual needs and interests of the parties. The IG needs to understand the respective ministers' thinking from a policy perspective, what they expect from the intelligence services, and how they're representing the legitimate policies of the government of the day. If the IG can't understand that, the IG cannot conduct oversight effectively. So the IG needs to reach out to these ministers to appreciate the dynamics and to also appreciate their thinking and what their priorities are in order to conduct effective oversight. And mutually, the ministers need to see the value of the IG as the only practitioner with full and unhindered access to intelligence information. So that failure speaks poorly about the IG and the respective ministers in the event that the relationship is not dynamically formulated and implemented. As an IG, one needs to reach out to the ministers, develop this warmth, mutual confidence, and develop appropriate linkages with the ministers, regular engagements, regular meetings, sharing of reports. The Act requires that all the reports of the IG need to be submitted to the ministers, the respective ministers. So that is the platform for engagement. Anything outside of that platform is a failure on the part of the IG, a lack of respect and lack of appreciation by the parties of the importance of that relationship. So one would use the reports of the IG, where the legislation requires these to be tabled with the ministers, as the medium through which this relationship must be established and maintained. Thank you.
No more questions, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mahwanisa.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, sir. No, I only have one issue to raise with you. You talked about a government component, that you advocate that the IGI's office must be supported by a government component. Now, my challenge for me with that approach is that the office itself derives its function from the Constitution, Section 210. And then that makes it, in fact, even the appointment, it must be a two-third majority by the House. And then if you look at the Act itself, the Intelligence Service Oversight Act, it requires the office to act independently. Now, if you combine all of those things, how will you enhance the stature of the office if it is just a government component?
You said that is the only question you have.
Yes,
That makes me happy.
I can see that the chair wants us to take that direction.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, the institutional form for the IG would enable the office to receive its budget directly from the National Treasury, to have its own financial statements, to appoint its own staff, and to reduce the dependency on the agency or any intelligence service that it oversees. But it wouldn't detract from the constitutional appointment of the IG or the functions of the IG in terms of the Intelligence Services Oversight Act. It's merely an institutional form, and I assure the Honourable Member it wouldn't detract from the importance or the status or the functions of the IG in any way or form. So that's my technical response. But I'd also like to add, if I could, Chairperson, that it's not beyond the realms of imagination that the IG's office could also have been an institution protecting democracy, a Chapter 9 institution. That's also something that could be considered by Parliament in their deliberations in elevating the status of the Inspector General to the level of the Public Protector, whose terms and conditions the two officers share in terms of conditions of employment. That's also not a far-fetched possibility that the IG could be seen as one of the institutions protecting democracy. It's a parliamentary question, I think, for the committee to also deal with. The government component is probably the least sophisticated form that will allow autonomy and independence, but wouldn't detract from the status of this function at all. But then there's also Chapter 9, but that's for the committee to deliberate. But there's every possibility that it could be a Human Rights Commission or a public protector. The IG could also assume that status and that level. And I would also propose that that be considered. Thank you.
your CV, page 6. From 1997 to 2002, it's under, what do this say? Under employment history. Consultant to the Ministry for Intelligence Services. What do the consultants do in the intelligence services? And then we'll follow after that.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, at the time, I was approached by the first ministers, and I'm honored to have worked with the Honorable Minister Joe Nhlanhla, Joe Dalla Umar. They approached me to assist with certain functions and conduct investigations, but I was still in practice. So I worked for 2 days a week for the minister, and I continued with my practice for 3 days. And that went on for a few years. Minister Joe Nhlanhla was then, he became a full minister. He was a deputy minister for intelligence under the Minister of Justice at the time. And in 1999 became a full Minister of Intelligence, and I continued to serve Minister Nhlanhla in that capacity, as well as the successive ministers who followed him on that arrangement until 2004, where I completely left. I approached the conflict, where I was asked to stop working for 2 days a week and consider joining full-time. That is what happened in 2004, that I left the private sector completely to work full-time for the government. And the consultant refers to that period when I used to work for the ministry for 2 days a week and continue my practice for the other 3 days.
I was actually asking, what actually were you doing? Unless if it's not for public knowledge. Maybe it's classified. Okay, my honorable doctor.
Thank you. You were in the Benoni Youth League in 1983, correct?
Yes.
Wasn't it called Congress, not Youth League?
Benoni Youth League. BYL, Benoni Youth League. Yeah.
And then in 1994, you were in the same branch as an election strategy and canvassing member of the NC. Do you know Honorable Magwanisha?
I don't remember enough.
You don't remember him?
No.
He was in the same branch. You don't recall him?
Not at all.
Okay. You worked with Comrade Steve Chwete?
No. You're talking about the late?
Yeah?
Yes.
You worked with him?
No, no.
Okay. Do you know TikTok?
Not that I can recall.
You don't know TikTok, a social media platform?
Oh, I see. Yes, I'm aware of it, but I don't use it here.
Oh, it has 9 million members in South Africa, give or take, I'm told. What do you think are the cybersecurity threats it poses? I mean, if tomorrow you were to be given a task by the president as per the Act to look into it, what would be a framework to investigate some of the cybersecurity threats that it poses? I have 10 minutes with you, so you got to come back. Yeah, go.
Thank you very much. That was just noting your question. Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The cybersecurity threats that TikTok could pose. For example, one of the threats that it could pose is to be used as a platform for dissemination of hate speech. For example, it could also be used to disseminate malicious messaging. And all of these could constitute a threat to security. We noted last year in the July incident that social media was used in a large way to propagate negative information, to incite people, and to mobilize people in a negative way, which constituted malicious propagation of messaging. So I see TikTok similar to WhatsApp and others, Facebook. They could be used for the nefarious purpose of disseminating negative propaganda and malicious speech that could incite people to take up violence and to act against the security of the state.
So this is a big thing. You know, Mark Zuckerberg appeared in front of the US Senate to speak to some of these important things you are mentioning in relation to Facebook. What are some of the things that could be done to avert these challenges? What should these users or platform owners be subjected to? For instance, to prevent data harvesting, pornography, or for foreign agencies to open accounts and operate them from in a no man's land. What are some of the mechanisms that could be used to avert these cybersecurity threats?
Yes, we've recently had legislation to deal with some aspects of cybersecurity. One of the important interventions that one considers necessary is to work together with these service providers, the TikToks and the Facebooks of this world, and to also compel them to have certain responsibilities. And I believe they do. There's a certain level of monitoring that is necessary by Facebook to manage the content that's appearing on its platforms, that it cannot be circumstances where anything goes, that their platforms can be abused. They have a responsibility for taking down inappropriate content, for reporting inappropriate content to the law enforcement agencies, and to monitor how their platforms are being used and whether they are being used for social purposes or to disseminate inappropriate information, hate speech, or also to mobilize the public in a negative way, also to provide disinformation to the public, to mislead and ill-inform the public, such as elections and those which we have seen taking place. So the first thing is to create a responsibility on the platform owner to monitor content.
But that is already there. It was already there during the riots last year. Let me just continue. I mean, there are interesting innovations of artificial intelligence which poses both benefits and threats on cyber attacks and actual cyber warfare. I mean, to the banking systems, to electricity in relation to the grid, but also to the Office of the IGI's protection of its own information, of its own data. What would you do tomorrow if we make you an IGI? What artificial intelligence tools would you take advantage of to build some kind of a defense for the IGI's office?
Look, Honorable Member, quite honestly, I would want to limit the IG's access to cyberspace. I would want to maintain a low profile in terms of allowing access by the public and third parties to IG.
But I'm looking for artificial intelligence tools that you would immediately, look into. There's lots of innovations that are coming out in relation to artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. There's a big problem in the IGI's cybersecurity concerns. There are big concerns there. Have you looked into that?
Well, with respect to the intelligence services, I would agree.
No, the IGI.
The IGI itself. No, yeah. I've not looked at the IGI using artificial intelligence.
No, I don't think he does. I think I'm saying there are huge cybersecurity problems for the protection of the IGI's information. SSA agents have often been noted to have access to ongoing reports that are being saved within the networks and the cyberspace.
But I'm saying that there are innovations that are coming out of, artificial intelligence that could be employed to avert those challenges that we should be taking advantage of. I'm asking you if you've applied your mind to that. In fact, okay, maybe you could just tell us what cybersecurity vision you would have. Intelligence today is really about the cyberspace. Majority of what we do in this country needs to be protected, concerns as well the cyberspace. But how would you protect the IGI's office from cyber attacks?
Yes, no, thanks for the question. Look, quite honestly, I've been in that office, and there's a real fear that the information you have at your disposal will be compromised. The information provided to you by the intelligence services.
When was this when you were there? Last when you were there? Which year?
Yeah, I was last there in 2012. Yeah. To the end of it, 2012, around the year.
That's before the fourth industrial revolution, no? Or
Yes.
is it?
Yeah.
So I'm asking you about artificial intelligence and the innovative tools that are coming out for the protection of against cyber attacks. What would you do if we appointed you tomorrow?
Look, from the IG's point of view, I wouldn't want to be too brave with respect to how information is managed and disseminated in the office. In fact, I may not be answering your question by making the suggestion that I would like to see a situation where the IG possesses a minimum amount of information that can be compromised. Information should not be removed from the intelligence services. The oversight must take place on site, and the IG, only reports should be developed by the IG. Any information or source information or sensitive information should remain under the custody of a head of a service.
What tools would you build to protect the information of the IGI, that it doesn't get hacked?
Sure. Okay.
Do I make sense now?
Yeah.
So the IGI collect for the certificates, the investigation, the data. What would you do? What tools coming out of AI would you use to protect the IGI's office from cyber attacks?
Yes.
You want to be an IGI, you should be able to have a sense of this. Am I correct?
Yes. Look, first of all, one would want to introduce firewalls to ensure that your systems are protected. Nobody can enter your system.
Are firewalls part of AI tools?
In part, yes.
In what way?
Well, firewalls prevent unauthorized access to your systems.
How are they artificial intelligent?
No, I hear you, yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Why should we put people as IGIs who don't apply themselves to the questions of the Internet of Things, the innovations? I mean, the entire cyber warfare is at the center of the coming attacks. I don't know. Why should we do this to ourselves as a country? You want to be the IGI. And one of the central things that must happen is to be able to know how cyber attacks, how the hackers are working, but to be in tune with the innovations of artificial intelligence, the machine of things, machine learning. Why should we do this to ourselves as South Africans? Could you motivate us, like have an opportunity? I'm pushing you to help us. We
Yes.
hear the laws, we hear white paper, 90s.
1 minute.
Why must we put people who don't have a vision in relation to cybersecurity?
Yeah, look, perhaps it is a surprise question, but cybersecurity is an essential part of where we're going. I mean, artificial intelligence is equally important. In fact, the intelligence services, the access to technology of the intelligence services, the ability to monitor all technology, movements of people, financial transactions, the use of technology to keep them alert and to monitor developments is critical. So I think artificial intelligence is an essential part of this. But as an IG's office, I wouldn't want to establish an IG's office itself that is vulnerable to technology and hacking. I think the IG should ensure that information is kept confidential. But the services, quite certainly, the intelligence officer for the future, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, use of technology to conduct all forms of intelligence and monitoring is critical. So I see that as a critical part. But for the IG, I don't see artificial intelligence as a critical, any foundational issue for the IG. But for the intelligence services, most certainly, I see it as central to what they do in the future.
Thank you very much. On a lighter note, if the question was asked to me, I would say I will Google.
Which means our candidates should have done very basic research.
Okay, I think we have got 10 minutes. Any follow-up? Do we have only one follow-up? Okay. 2 minutes.
Yes, I really want to redeem you or myself. I think that a lot of our world is becoming very much about algorithms. The banking system, the way we do electricity. We are conversing most of the time in the last 2 years. Parliament is held in the internet space. That's where things, they are not going, they are there. The IGI's office, it's not true that it does not have to protect itself against AI attacks or the benefits or the usage of artificial intelligence for cyber attacks. They could attack you as an IGI and rob you of sensitive classified information, use it to destabilize the country. This is critical. I want you to react to my disappointment that you think those benefits are not important for the office of the IGI. What is your reaction to the office of the IGI? What's your reaction to that?
Yes, look,
A minute.
I will look into it and apply my mind. I don't want to be dishonest in my response. I see the technology and the artificial intelligence as the bedrock of the conduct of intelligence in the future, that the intelligence services need to be sharpened from a technological point of view, from using artificial intelligence to see and to anticipate threats. But as an IG's office, I respectfully want to submit that I would, in fact, wouldn't want to connect the IG systems to the internet and to cyberspace at all at this time. I would want to tread carefully and support the intelligence services. I see this as their future. But the IG and oversight, I think we need to maintain a certain level of discretion, and I would rather be conservative at this stage and how we deal with technology.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, Mr. Faisal, I will give you a chance for comments on the whole process. If you have anything to tell the panel, or if you would like to say anything, it's your chance. 2 minutes.
Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much.
Can we be in order? Can we be in order? It's on the platform. You are still on the platform.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and you are released.
Recording stopped.
Colleagues, can I find out, we go for dinner and have the... Okay, okay, then let's have our 15 minutes.
we linked up?
Yes, we are. We just
Hello? Hello, sir, can you hear me?
he's looking from that side. Not us.
You must mute.
Hello?
Banging on the.
He's trying to unmute himself.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Put your hand by your ear.
Just sign language, yes.
Yeah, by your ear, like it's.
No, but the audio is not connected. You see, it's clear.
Cinema message inside.
He can see us.
In his language.
No, he's waving.
Can you hear us?
No, he can't hear. Can't
But
hear.
you see now, it's just
maybe
connected
it's
to
mine.
audio.
Are you mute?
Yeah, but is mine, who's on, we're on mute.
Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Here, hold this up. Hold it closer to the picture, to the,
Because of the camera.
there we go. Can you read it yet?
I've
Get
seen
in there.
I've seen it in a WhatsApp chat. I sent it in a WhatsApp.
It's not visible.
I don't think you can read it. Oh, I can read it this side. There we go, there we go. Unmute.
Can you take it on to other channel or someone?
Oh, yeah, read it. Why?
Hello, are you able to hear us? Okay, we're unmuted.
Can you hear?
Chat box. Where's the chat box? Do you understand what a chat box is, Hella? I must mute.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, he's talking on WhatsApp.
And how are you, Brigadier?
Thank you so
How are
much,
you?
sir. We are fine on this other side of India.
Okay. And
How are
what
you doing? How are you doing back home?
well, it's very fine around here. At this time, what should I say? Should I say good morning or should I say good evening?
Now the time is still good evening because it's 2 minutes past 11.
Okay, I think we can now start.
Thank
The
you,
first
sir.
thing I will do is can you see all of us sitting here?
You won't be able to see that.
Only see you now.
Okay, then let me say we are a panel of 9 people, and I'm the chairperson, and all of us are members of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. So if we were to start, you applied for.
I am able to see some other members now. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going through. I am able to
Okay.
see them.
Okay. Would you like them to introduce themselves?
I would
Or
love
as-
that.
Okay.
But my main problem is that the names are not visible on the cards in front of them. It's coming closer. It's coming closer. Can you
Okay.
go closer? Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jerome Make. I'm the chairperson of the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, and I'm chairing the panel today that is interviewing you. So let's introduce ourselves to you. I hope they will shift the cameras so that you see us one at a time.
Thank you very much. I'm Diane Kohler-Barnard, and I'm a member of this committee.
You are Barnard, madam? Because I can't see the name. Is it Barnard?
It's Kohler-Barnard,
Barnard.
like Coca-Cola, Kohler-Barnard. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Doris Lagute, a member of this committee.
Good evening, Takude.
Yebo Itfa.
Itpa. I'm sorry for that. Sorry, ma'am, I am fond of writing. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, madam.
I am Masifako Dihale.
Miss Khale.
D-I.
D-L.
D-I-K-G-A-L-E. D. Khale.
Thank
The
you, ma'am.
Sotho name. Thank you.
Good evening, General Brigadier Fongoka.
Good evening,
I am Beki Hadebe with H. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Brigadier. My name is Kenny Muimang, a member of the committee. Thank you.
Kenny Muhima.
Muimang.
Mu with a U. Ima.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Brigadier. My name is Dirk Stubbe.
Toba.
Stubbe, S-T-U-B-B-E.
Tuba.
That's also
Good evening,
correct.
sir.
Good evening.
to you.
Good evening, Brigadier. My name is Bulelani Makwanisha.
Good evening, Mr. Bulelani. Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much, Brigadier.
Hi, my name is Ndlozi. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Rose.
I think we can now continue. We only have 45 minutes for the whole interview. 45 minutes. We will start. Maybe you can start by giving us a short. Can I say, just tell us about yourself and a bit of your background, after which maybe you give us what is your vision of your vision for the Office of the Inspector General and the challenges that you think are there and how you think you can correct those. Can you say that in 10 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Over to you then.
My name's Pumzile Zamile Collingworth Fongoka. I am a 58-year-old married man with 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl. I was born 1963 in the old township, East London, Duncan Village. And then I grew up in Mtanzane. I went to school in Mtanzane. Somewhere in my life, I left the country just before I finished matric. I left the country, I went to Lesotho, escaping the situation at that time. In Lesotho, I studied, then I completed my O-levels. But when I left the country, I was doing Form 2, but when I arrived in Lesotho, I had to start from Form 1 and I completed. That is the time that I carried on with my activism as I had left South Africa due to that engagement. In actual sense, I wanted to go to join Umkhonto Wesizwe at that time. But because I was a young boy of 16 years, I was stopped from going to join. That's why I stayed in Lesotho until I completed my grade 12. And from there, I stayed in Lesotho operationally as an underground, as I was at home as a courier. Then from there, I left Lesotho and I went to Angola via Tanzania. This is 1986, where I actually received now a formal training as a cadre of Umkhonto Wesizwe, of which I carried on with my military training until in 1990s, when situation at home was demanding that you return home for negotiation. I decided, or I requested the organization, out of the choices, and either to come home or carry on with studies. I decided to go to study in Nigeria. There I registered for the admin, which unfortunately I could not finish because of the political situation in that country at that time. I returned home, and when I returned home, it is now 1992 late, but in 1993 I got myself into university through also the bursaries from the organization, which after I could not complete that because of family problems, I decided to go and integrate into the NDF. Then I carried on with the SANDF until today, that I am started as a captain, and then after that I carried on, grew up in all ranks with all the training and academic developments within the SANDF. And then
Sorry, Brigadier, you mustn't forget you have got 10 minutes for that introduction and the vision and everything else.
Until I became a brigadier general after serving throughout the SANDF as an HR officer. Then after that, I was deployed here where I am. This is 2018, where I'm appointed as a defense attorney. My vision, or why did I apply? First thing I would say that as I've grown as an HR officer, I realized that my time is gone, I'm going on pension. Then I said, I don't think I have served my country to what I wanted to. When this post was advertised for the first time, I did not see it. During the second time of advertisement, it was reopened. I noted and I said, after reading and following up events that talk about that post, I decided that if it's about monitoring and reviewing, to me, the experience that SMTF and South African people have given to me as an HR officer, and I applied. I need to say thank you to you and those who worked with the shortlisting. I'm grateful of the opportunity that I've been shortlisted to be able to present my case in an attempt to say to my country, I am ready to serve, regardless of the fact that I have done my part as far as I'm concerned in the DOD, with the rank that I'm carrying, and as a military diplomat here in India. That is the vision that I have now, is that having followed the organization oversight in terms of intelligence, I have noted that my HR experience would fit like a glove in the current situation of the office of the IGI. And my vision is that of saying, in the understanding that all systems are there, there is an act, there's everything, and we have gone through all ins and outs with people who are supposed to be professionals in the intelligence. And I believe it is time now to bring in an HR officer who thinks he has a role to play in terms of seeing to it that the office of IGI is able to do or bring in innovative ideas in order to do what I'm expected to do. If you are so, I am so grateful that you would give me the post.
Okay, Brigadier, what is going to happen now? The members of the panel are going to each ask questions for clarification, and the questions that would test whether you might be the right candidate and so on. So I will open up to the panel to ask questions.
Good evening to you. It's Diane Kohler-Barnard here. Before we begin, could you explain for me on your declaration? I see you've marked here that you had a judgment against you in a civil claim. Could you explain what happened there, please?
I think that is the one where I was talking around the issues of not being a good payer with my creditors.
Yes, so what happened?
And most of those happened when I was a junior officer, and as I proceeded until today, I have been able to clear those credits, and I was able to clear my name, such that when I was vetted for this post, and I was able to get my job.
Okay, so you do have top security clearance.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, let me put a few questions to you about the actual job as Inspector General. Spell out for us the various functions that the President may, according to the legislation, designate to the IGI, in which case, who exactly does that report go to? To the President or to us on the committee? And do you believe there are certain Inspector General functions you do not have to report on to us as a committee?
Ma'am, yes, in terms of the Act, if I do my normal duties of doing the monitoring of the compliance with the Constitution and the rest of the policies and the acts, and I do my revising or the reviewal of the activities of intelligence and counterintelligence as it is, I report to you with those at a particular time. And the Act requires that now when I am tasked by the President and the Minister to exercise judgment or myself as the, if I am appointed as an IGI in terms of complaints that are brought to the attention in terms of complaints around the activities of intelligence communities, the three organizations that belongs to that at the moment, in terms of whether there are people who feel that there was a misuse of power or mismanagement, or also in terms of the situation where members within the intelligence community complain of certain things and or certain malfunctionings or certain ways that they were handled or issues were handled. If I am then tasked by the president, I report directly to the president on that. But it does not then say, because I report directly to the president on that tasking, there is no way, depending on what is it that I have done, not to give out that which was certain details that were not required to be divulged to the community. But the issue of tasking and as well as me doing functions, because that is the organization that I am your operational soldier on the ground as the committee.
Thank you very much. Apologies, did I interrupt you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will get to the second panelist, Honorable Zagude.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good evening, Brigadier Fongoka. I hope I pronounced your surname well. Okay, thank you very much for that. Brigadier, the high-level panel report agreed with the 2006 task team report on the reviewal of the intelligence-related legislations, policy, and regulations, and also the 2008 Matthew Commission on the OIGI must have an independent status with its own administration and budget. What is your view on that one? And if appointed as the IGI, how are you going to ensure that the OIGI get that status, that independent status? Thank you.
Firstly, ma'am, if the high panel has indicated as part of its recommendation that it tells us that the requirement consideration of those communities that the structure and all that of the HR office, any institution that has no control on its manner of staff. If you follow my CV, you'll see that I was a former director of Army HR for 3 to 4 years. I've said I've grown as an HR office. If an institution is dependent on another institution, especially in this setup where this institution has to look into ability to function, service that other institution to an extent where if they go wrong, this is the institution that will come to you, go to the minister, call them and find out why they are not up to standard, the performance or the delivery is expected. It is that institution is dependent on the service for that. That institution is doomed not to function well. I've lost your picture, ma'am. Can you still hear me? Hello?
Through you, Chairperson, yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, that is the first thing that makes it possible to operate. Second, is the budget, staffing. I mean, my studies have told me that the Office of IGI is unable to function because posts are vacant. Therefore, I believe that those recommendations go around that incapability of the Office of IGI to function, which I think your committee and myself, there is also a way. I had the requirements, which I agree with the requirement of changing the legislation and all that. But that status can come after we have tried to put down mechanisms of trying to find out what is it that, why are there is conflict of interest for organizations that, according to me, intelligence must be done by people of high standard of professionalism. Therefore, there should be no feeling of not, and there should be no feeling of try and look for the meaning of individual assisted relation would support in future, but it does not say to me that is the immediate situation. We can work with it.
Can you?
Okay,
continue.
We can act within the current situation to be able to manage that. But yes, that is the nature of that recommendation, and those are the status that the independence should be on. It must be treated as other institutions that protect and support constitutionalism and democracy. The status, ultimately, that is where the Office of IG should go to. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. We will move to the next panelist. It's Honorable Madi Khali.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me, Brigadier?
I can hear you very well.
Thank you very much. At the moment, the Office of the IGI does not have a deputy. In your opinion, based on the study of the current legislative framework, what legislative amendments are required for this office to have a deputy? Thank you.
Then the structural, firstly, I've talked about the independence. In the previous question, I related that it must be an independent entity, as recommended by the High Panel. Now, in terms of the fact that there is currently no deputy, structurally an organization without a deputy would not function well, especially with the tasking of the Office of the IGI or whoever the incumbent in the post. An IGI's deputy, it allows sharing of responsibilities, and it also allows that if the act is changed, it must say that in the event that the IGI, the powers of the deputy, I mean, I'm a military man, in all operations and all formations of the military, including HR, you must have a fallback on absence of somebody who is acting. Therefore, a deputy is an administrator of the office, so that the IGI is the person who looks into operational, not day-to-day management of the office, but is able to inform and keep the deputy aware, so that in the absence, then the deputy will be able. My reading or the act says the IGI is allowed to appoint any person in his office to do responsibilities as listed 1, 2, subsection 4 or A4. I'm not very good with the legal or the document explanation of the act. It means if the IGI is said, I want certain people to do certain functions, but if there is a deputy and the structure or the composition of the office of the IGI is supported with the act allows it to be able to appoint through your committee a deputy. Therefore, it will be easy to function in that situation. One of the things, because if the history is correct, I am not very sure, I've just been reading a few information around the office. One of the complaints
Are you still there, Brigadier? Okay. Yeah. We can hear you from this side.
Can you hear us, Brigadier? He's muted.
Chair, even when he was still on, we were struggling to hear the responses.
Can you hear us now? Brigadier, can you hear us now? We can't hear you.
You can hear us.
But we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you are.
Can you hear
Yeah, we can hear you. Then
We can hear you now.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I was able to articulate the previous question, or you were able to hear me?
Can continue.
As I was saying, on that question of the second in command or the deputy, it is a correct operational arrangement of any institution because continuity lies there and sharing of duties. And if that is permitted, it will assist in terms of operational capability of the office of the IGI, especially when the IGI is gone. And as well as distribution of work between the two. The deputy can concentrate on office running or office management, while the IGI concentrate on issues of the core business. And one other thing that asked in the hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, continue. Continue, we can hear you.
One other thing that the military experience has shown me is that even in any battle or any engagement or on any institutional operation, at the minute where the leader, which is the IGI in this case, is absent, there is continuity. It is not disturbing the section or other people who lead other directorates, departments within the same office. The deputy quickly takes over and continues. I think the other consideration of future operations or act or policies or regulations is that when that IGI and the deputies terms are planned, they must be planned in such a way that they are that they do not disappear from the system out of there. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will now move to Honorable Hadebe with an H.
Thank you, Chair. Brigadier, having read the report on the high-level review panel on the state security agents, I'm sure you would agree with me that the relationship between the office of the IGI and that of services is an antagonistic one. And if it was a marriage, I would say they've reached a stage of irretrievable and irreconcilable breakdown of relationship. If you were to be appointed tomorrow, what measures are you going to put in place to ensure that we return to normal and the stakeholder relation is improved in order for you to be able to execute your powers and function as enshrined in the Act? I'm raising this because the whole number of reports, recommendations in the form of a certificates that have not yet been implemented, some are dating back to 10 years ago. Thank you.
Brigadier. Brigadier, you can answer. You hear us? Can I just, can you hear us, Brigadier? Can we have, if it links up again, can we have maybe one more question and close? This doesn't seem to be working. Can you hear us now? No, we can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, I was muted. Are you hearing me now?
No, we can continue. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Continue.
Honorable, thank you for that question. Through Chair, I would like, as IGI, who would have to work with you, I want us to make an undertaking. One of the solutions to our problems is that if you appoint me, if you give me, we'll need to sit down first and workshop all what the shortlisted people have said, all the discussions that were held between the committee and all 10 of us. If we will sit down all together, including the services, and find a way to workshop this dysfunctional that as South Africans we have owned to today and yesterday. That is the first thing. The second thing is that the system of cooperation does not exist. Hello? Can you still read me?
Yeah, no.
Yes, you can proceed, Brigadier.
I hope you've understood what I'm saying. The information that was discussed by people who are not like me, who are from within the intelligence community in South Africa, with long years of service, and on matters that the committee knows, if we go and sit or workshop all that, we will be able to pin down the problems that exist in terms of that, what you call unrepairable form of relationship as the first thing. Do we, Chair, I'm not expecting you to say yes to me, but I'm requesting if you give me the opportunity. Because there is a lot of information that has been given by people who are part of the system, who know the system of why it does not work. And if we workshop that with the services, I can
We have lost you, Brigadier. Brigadier, we have lost you. Chair, I propose that we adjourn because really, I don't want us to embark on the exercise for the sake of compliance or ticking boxes. It's unfair to the candidate. I'm not sure how do we move forward, but we have been patient enough. We keep on losing him. I don't think we're doing justice at this point in time. That would be my proposal, Chair. I don't know how do we move from here, but the process now, as things stand, it's no longer fair to us and to the candidate.
Chairperson, can I help?
I think we are live. You see, that's another thing.
May I just help, not help or propose that the Brigadier switches off the video? That may overwhelm the streaming in terms of data consumption. So if he switches off the video, because we've already seen him, and he speaks, that might ease the network.
Brigadier, can you hear me? If you can hear me, may you please switch off your video? Maybe that might help. I mean, yeah, switch off the camera, maybe it might help. Because we can't hear you. If you can hear me, can you try and switch off your camera and let's see whether it won't be better. He can't even hear me.
Even us who have reached that irreparable breakdown of communication and relationship with the candidate.
Hello, can you hear me now?
No, that's fine. Let's have coffee. We'll be patient. Yes, I agree.
She's busy trying to call him. Yeah, they're busy there.
Oh.
Cannot read you.
Mm.
No, let's be patient and give him another chance.
Okay, we can't hear you even ourselves. Yeah?
Let's be patient. I think.
I think I will agree with you because there's no other way we can do it. He must be live, and the equipment was rented for only. That's why I'm suggesting that when we get him back, let's have one or two people asking questions, and then we can take it from there. At least we would have tried our best. Otherwise, if we don't do that, there's no way in which we will do it again. We can't borrow these things for one person.
Yeah, he's not. I'm trying to call him, but we're not getting through to him. He's not receiving us.
This is what we were trying. Are we live? Are we still live?
We are live. We're still live.
Can you hear us?
Official residence.
Office is worse than here. Hello, it's me on the phone. On the phone, yes, I am on the phone. I can hear you very well, man.
Thank you. Can you hear?
Honorable,
Yeah, you were still.
All yours. Yes, sir, I'm all yours.
Sir,
Please proceed. I'm listening attentively.
sir, as a grown-up professional, to me, it's serious when I'm saying what you have heard, what you know, and what you listen would help us to unpack the blockage in terms of what is a problem in terms of cooperation between the services and the office of the IGI. For me, it is serious when I'm saying if we go and we absorb all what was said and discussed, I think if given the opportunity as this human resource that your defense force has produced, I am confident if given a chance, we will be able to move forward and create. So, in these arrangements, you need for cooperation, you need certain regulations within the existing act, within the existing conditions before we venture into the necessity of reviewing the acts. We need to deal with what we know. And what we know is what was shared with you in this. And I am going to explain something when I talked about NICOP. It is by nature a coordination mechanism. Therefore, I also propose, if given a chance, we need to look into the distinctive functions of the same side of the same coin, which is coordination and cooperation. Cooperation can only be ensured. We do not need an act for cooperation. We need a sort of regulations and consultations and agreements and creating, and then the committee goes and approach the parliament or to find a way in which in time legislations will be there so that if after all this which we know is being looked at, then we then go to actions of being punitive to those who do not abide by certain regulations by the act before we can go and consider the changing of the act or opening up. Because remember, the act was also created as we were coming out of the apartheid system, bringing the former enemies together. Therefore, the act, it is automatic that it has lived its time. We need to do that, but that is not an immediate action. I say, what has been divulged and discussed with you by people who, not me, people who have worked, I think there is an element of mechanisms to unwind and bring in sense in this which you call a relationship that is not repairable, because people doing intelligence must be guided by the Constitution, must be guided by the understanding that our people have requirements, must be guided by the rule of law. Therefore, a sort of regulations that talk to the rule of law, to the Constitution, to the Act, can make the services to see the IG in action as a person or as an institution that is not there to shoot them down or to monitor them in a negative way. But once we create a common goal, like you talked about the review, it talks about going to a situation where we have national security. Once we get to that, we have policies that talk to national interest. Then we begin to talk about ways that can bind us all so that we believe in serving the same God, if I might use that, or reading from the same Bible. That is what my HR experience tells me. And I have done that in the defense. It's on record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Can we now get to the next panelist, who is Honorable Muima?
Muima. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mr. Fongota.
Good evening, Honorable.
The question that I want to pose to you relates to your understanding of the provision of Section 7.6 that speaks to the accountability of the IG. So, does the IG report only on the administrative functioning of the office, or does it report to the committee in terms of its legislative functions as described in Section 7 of the Act, which deals with the functions of the IGI? Thank you.
Sir, thank you. As I indicated, Honorable, that if I am appointed, the only lawyer I can run to, it is the committee. The IG on functions that he does report directly. I have a problem with a once-off reporting. I, as an HR officer, I believe on continuity of forms of reporting. Therefore, what am I saying? In the event that I'm appointed, if IG is performing the functions, he reports directly to the committee, and he reports to the minister when tasked by the minister, and to the president when tasked. And in terms of certificates, the process is as per the certificates and the reporting channels. But if appointed, my only higher command, it is that is the group of people who have made a request of a workshop to on the information that you have received throughout these 2 days. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brigadier. Thank you, Chairperson.
The next panelist is Honorable Stebe.
Brigadier,
Yes, sir, I'm still here.
Sorry, I need to put on the other mic also. In terms of Section 7.9 of the Oversight Act, it determines that no access to intelligence information or premises contemplated in
I have not copied. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Section 7.9 of the Oversight Act
Yes.
determines that
Yes.
no access to intelligence, information, or premises contemplated in subsection 8 may be withheld from the IGI on any grounds. Now the question is, does this mean that no access to information, intelligence, or premises may be withheld by any services as a general rule? What is your comment on that?
Yes, sir. Hello, I've lost you.
Yes? Can you hear?
Must I answer?
Yes, please.
Sir, the IG has a right to information and premises, including the premises of those institutions that do not fall within his organizations that he reviews and monitors. But as long as the information it is pertaining to that which has to do with the services. The other thing is that in the event that that information has to do with a situation where it threatens the interest of the country, or it has to do with issues of, as indicated in the Criminal Act. Therefore, the IG will have to revoke that ability to get that information. But in general, IG is allowed and is permitted by the Act to have access to all information.
Thank you, Brigadier.
We will now get to Honorable Dr. Ndlozi.
Yes, Brigadier, I have just two clarity-seeking questions which I'm going to ask at the same time because they really have to do with your timeline on your CV. But
yes, sir.
Maybe just thank you for your service to the country, being far away from a family and so on and so forth.
Appreciated, sir.
You say on your CV that you were baptized with combat fire and battle experience during the Northern Front skirmishes against UNITA in 1977. I think you wanted to say 87 because in 1977...
87, sir. 87. Thank you, sir.
And then you say that you attended military specialization training in Yugoslavia and Eastern Germany in 1988 and 1989, respectively. At the same time,
yes, sir.
At the same time, you served as an administrator of the plot in Luanda.
Yes, sir.
End of 89 to 90, agreed?
Yes, sir.
Earlier on, you say that in the same year, 88 to 89, you participated in organizing the Solidarity Student Actions in and around Mdantsane and East London. It doesn't make sense. Those are the same time periods. You can't be both in Yugoslavia.
Sorry, what is... Sorry, can you explain that of the student? That is in the 70s.
Oh, but here it says in and around Mdantsane and East London during 88 and 89.
So what has happened to my writing? That's my operational political involvement was before 1980. It was before 1980, sir. Honorable member, thank you for that. It is just I did not realize I've messed up the logic in those dates.
No, I thought it's a military skill to be at the same place, in different places at the same time. I thought it was your training.
I will not comment on that, sir. I am now in South Africa while I'm sitting in India. I think you have understood.
No, thanks very much, General. I like your demeanor. Despite the difficulties in technology, I think you have delivered yourself very well. And I personally wish you the best over deliberations. Thank you.
Brigadier, you can still hear me?
I can still hear you, Chairperson.
Okay. Let me just go around and find out if there are no follow-up questions. Seemingly
yes, Chairperson.
There are no follow-up questions from the panelists. Let me give you a chance before we close. Is there anything that you would like to tell the panel about the interview itself, let alone the technology, but anything that you would like to say or comment? Over to you.
Sir, Chairperson, through you to all the members, as I indicated that while I come from the court, while I am a human resource officer, I am one of you, and I believe I am a product of the struggles that you've gone through. And the way I have handled myself, it is exactly the way that you have produced soldiers like me. But being a human resource officer, I think I have been baptized in understanding institutional management. It is on record in the South African Army, SANDF. One thing I need to raise, where I am sitting as a defense attaché, there is a weakness within our systems where an office of a defense attaché is not utilized to the fullest, because in what you are talking about, intelligence or ability to project one's national interest, or to project or to find ways to protect that which makes the country to function, a structure like defense attachés should be used very well. And this is on record in the SANDF. I have indicated this. It is something that we need to look, because we are not operationalizing it very well. But I must thank you, all of you, for giving me the opportunity. And I must also thank you, South Africa, for allowing me to present what I think it is a way of continuing my contribution to the prosperity of my country. Thank you so much.
And you must represent us well in India, and maybe bring the whole panelists something from India when you come back. Thank you very much, and we are out.
Members, I didn't hear what the chairperson was saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we are out. All right.
Just bring it.
Recording stopped.
Highly appreciated, members.